It was roughly 9:30 a.m. on Thursday, March 10th, 1983, when Bill McArthur arrived in downtown Little Rock. His destination was the Walls Building, a 9-story structure at 105 Main Street, located today across from the city's convention center. While completely willing to be there, the criminal defense lawyer's presence at the county-owned building had been compelled by a subpoena. For the next 2 days, McArthur would be questioned by a Pulaski County grand jury, which had been impaneled on February 16th by Circuit Court Judge John Langston. Special Prosecuting Attorney Darrell Brown, who had made history as the first black player for the Arkansas Razorbacks football team, was leading the grand jury. For the previous month, the group of 16 people, made up of 13 men and 3 women, had primarily been meeting in room 300 of the Walls Building. McArthur was the latest in a slew of witnesses to go before them, following the likes of Mary Lee Orsini, Eugene Yankee Hall, police investigators, and more. At one point in the questioning of McArthur, Brown asked the criminal defense attorney turned witness a somewhat personal question.
Can you describe your wife's personality and character to the jury so that they can better understand who Alice McArthur was?
McArthur didn't answer immediately. He took 31 seconds to gather his thoughts about how to describe Alice, the 41-year-old woman he married on February 1st, 1964, and had 2 children with, Chuck and Robin. When he finally spoke, he did so alternating between the present and past tense.
Alice is approximately 5'6", 5'7", blonde, pretty. She often said that until she went to college, she thought she was a goddess because she lived in a town of French people who spoke French, all dark-haired. She was only blonde in that area. She said that facetiously, of course, but Alice was very bright, very enthusiastic.
After a few moments, an emotional McArthur asked for a drink of water. When he continued, his description of his wife wasn't quite as raw, but nonetheless heartfelt.
Physically, Alice was very athletic and appeared so. She had an athletic body. She stayed in good physical condition, I'd say all the time, and that's pretty much true, I think. She was an avid tennis player, had a great deal of pride in herself, had a great deal of confidence in herself. Mentally, she was bright. If she had an opinion about something, it was a very strong one. She made and maintained opinions. We often disagreed, but I always valued her thoughts because she was bright. She was an excellent mother. She devoted a great deal of her time to the kids. Yet a strong disciplinarian, as we both are. 2 things in particular took up her time, other than just the daily routine of the children, and that was her fondness for tennis and other sporting activities, and the school when they attended. She made a few extremely close, good friends, rather than like myself. I've got a lot of acquaintances and very few really close friends. Alice always has a group of friends that she spends a lot of time with, does a lot of things for. She gave an appearance of being brash at times, loud at times. She loved to have a good time, most of which was a facade because underneath she was really quite gentle.
What was the purpose of the grand jury to which Bill McArthur shared these details? To investigate, quote, the circumstances leading up to and surrounding the death of Alice McArthur and all matters required or authorized by statute. What follows is an account of, in as real time as possible, events that happened the afternoon and evening of July 2nd, 1982. It's comprised of the grand jury testimony of Bill McArthur and others, communications between Pulaski County Sheriff's Office personnel, and interviews conducted years after the fact by Gene Lyons for his book Widow's Web, and interviews done for this podcast. For weeks after the failed May 21st car bombing of Alice McArthur, according to Eugene Yankee Hall, his lover and co-conspirator Mary Lee Orsini had been, quote, scheming. Mary Lee had, quote, done a lot of running around and legwork, end quote, all over Little Rock, trying to pin down whether Alice had a set day-to-day schedule or not. Part of that involved pumping Bill McArthur's secretary, Phoebe Pinkston, for information about Alice in the wake of the failed bombing.
But I know after Alice got bombed, in fact, I think there's an incident wrote down, she said she went jogging with a friend, and she thought this car tried to run them over. And she called me and said, Phoebe, tell Bill to tell Alice don't get in the set pattern of what she does every day. She said, I think that's what's happened to me. And I try to vary the things that I do. And she said, you know, you need to tell Alice to, I said, and I think I made a comment. I said, well, you try and tell Alice McArthur something. I said, Alice going to do what she wants to do. One time, I don't remember when this was brought up. I can't remember. I don't remember when. I remember telling different clients had asked me what she looked like because when they call home and Alice had answered the phone, she has a deep voice and they thought maybe it was his father or somebody. They didn't know it was Alice. And one time she asked me what Alice looked like, and I told her she was a real athletic looking type, you know, had a nice body, was attractive. I always described her like somebody's PE teacher or something. And I remember, I think I said one time something about Alice playing tennis. And I think after the bottom, I somehow comment, you know, that Alice played tennis a lot, but I didn't even know where she played or what her schedule was. Nobody knew what Alice's schedule was.
Evidently, she had no regular schedule, Hall reiterated in an August 29th interview with Pulaski County Deputy Prosecutor Chris Piazza and Pulaski County Sheriff Tommy Robinson. At one point, Mary Lee and Yankee even considered taking a rifle and shooting Alice while she played tennis at her nearby athletic club. However, the best option, Mary Lee concluded, was 24 Inverness Circle, the same site of the bombing attempt. Mary Lee had also wanted Yankee to drive by the homes of one of McArthur's law partners, James Nelson, and her own, to fire bullets at him, but Yankee refused, not wanting to potentially be caught driving around with a gun. After debating whether to go with a plan involving posing as a delivery person or a repairman, Mary Lee settled on Yankee and recruit Larry McClendon, acting as a flower delivery service. She made a sign to put in the window so it would probably look like a delivery car, and she took a clipboard and she put little stickers on it from a florist, Hall described. She made her list of deliveries. Of course, they were all fictitious, and put McArthur's name in column 1. Hill expressed concerns about the McArthur's children being home, but Mary Lee assured him Robin and Chuck were going to be spending the July 4th week at a summer camp. It had to be done that week, because they would be back the following Monday, Yankee told authorities. On the night of either June 30th or July 1st, Mary Lee told Yankee that the stakes were being raised.
$20,000 up to that week, and as the week dragged on, Bill was worried again, I guess, that we weren't going to get this done, or she said he was. And then he said, which she told me he said, that he told her that if we got it done that week for sure, that he would throw in another $5,000. And he made the comment to her that he didn't want to spend the weekend with her. They were going with some friends, and he didn't want to spend the weekend with her. He wanted it done.
What does it take for someone to go from being a no to being a yes to the idea of committing murder? In the spring of 1983, a grand juror raised this question directly to Yankee.
I hope you won't think my curiosity is morbid. But this is one thing that has just my curiosity for weeks now. And we all, at some point in our life, say, I'd never kill somebody. I'd never do that. You know? What is it that happens to a person from your own experience to where you get from saying, I'd never do that to, yeah, I'll go along and help? Yeah.
That's my self-evident a million times since, you know. Just don't know. Like I said, I've never done anything like this. You could ask. Every cop in town knows me. I mean, I've been, around. But none of them would ever suspect me of committing murder. You could ask anyone. Ford Parkman inside. I've known him for years. And he can tell you, it's just everybody was surprised. Everybody that knows me, my friends, the police, everybody just can't believe it. And I can't believe it. I've never even thought about doing anything like this. Well, I've never been asked, really.
Maybe that's it.
Maybe I would have done it. I don't know. But I was never even approached, never even thought about doing it. And I just can't explain really why I've done it. I just don't know.
Between 7:30 and 8 a.m., Larry McClendon knocked on the door of Yankee's apartment, located at 207 North Izzard, to get his partner. However, Yankee told him he wasn't ready and to come back later, which he did at 10 a.m. Whatever it was that had pushed them across the line, the money or the charms of a woman, both Yankee and McClendon began their time together on July 2nd by driving to North Little Rock. Sometime before 11 a.m., they stopped at a car shop at 3701 Harold Street, where Yankee had had a blue 1967 Corvette towed on June 26th. Yankee and McClendon arrived in the latter's 1970 Cadillac. I remember the windows being darker than usual, employee Jimmy Phillips said. When they first drove up, I thought the car was occupied by 2 black males. As he talked with Yankee, the man was retrieving items from the Corvette, including a poster board that read Tipton and Hurst Florist along the top. The lettering at the top looked like it was cut from some other kind of paper and pasted on, Phillips said. After about 15 to 20 minutes, the duo retreated to Yankee's apartment, located in the shadow of Little Rock Police Headquarters. The waiting began.
Decisions made in Washington affect folks in Arkansas. I'm Alex Thomas, the Washington correspondent for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. I'm keeping a close eye on what happens in the nation's capital and how decisions and decision makers impact our state. Take, for instance, the next Farm Bill. We're connecting you with the policymakers drafting this legislation, as well as the Arkansas farmers vital to this state's economy. I know how much these decisions matter to everyday Arkansans, which is why I'm here in Washington, making sure you stay informed. This kind of coverage is only possible through your support. So consider subscribing at arkansasonline.com/ADG now.
Around 10:50 a.m., Gail Edelman, an employee of the West Side Tennis Club, answered the phone while on duty. On the other end was a woman who sounded like she was in her 40s, calling about Alice McArthur. The caller said her and some friends were planning a surprise party for Alice, according to Edelman, and asked when she would be done playing tennis. Edelman explained Alice's league that day had been canceled. She suggested checking with Alice's friend Anita, if she knew who she was. The caller seemed calm, but sounded like I recognized her as a friend of Alice's or a friend of mine, Edelman told police. After spending his morning in Little Rock Municipal Court and giving a deposition at another law office, Bill McArthur arrived at his own office at 2020 South Broadway between noon and 12:30 p.m.
Before I left Marquette's office, I called my office, and Phoebe told me that the ORSINI had wanted to come in and see me that afternoon late. I told her that I couldn't see her late because I was going to try to get away early. I had an appointment that afternoon that I could remember at 4 o'clock. I wanted to make that my last appointment.
For the entire week, Mary Lee had been calling Phoebe Pinkston, trying to schedule an appointment with McArthur. She had a million different reasons to be in the office that day, Phoebe would say. However, until the brief window on July 2nd, the office had been swamped, keeping the attorney busy. With his instructions, Phoebe called Mary Lee to let her know when she had to be in the office.
From the time I got back to the office up until I left that afternoon, I saw one person or group of people after another. It was just a constant flow of people in there that afternoon.
While McArthur was occupied with his parade of meetings, Mary Lee was also busy. According to records, between noon and 2 p.m., 5 calls were placed to and from the McArthur residence located at 24 Inverness Circle. One, at 12:31 p.m., was placed by Bill from his office to get in touch with Alice.
That morning, she went shopping. I know. One thing she was doing, buying me some new shorts. But she was also grocery shopping and getting things to her we need to take over there. When I called her, because I let the phone ring a long time before, longer than I normally would, and Alice picked it up, got a breath, and she just walked in the house and picked up the phone. She was shocked. She told me she got me some shorts and that I needed to be home before 5:30. Our plans were that I was going to go home, I was going to mow the front yard, we were going to get dressed, and go out by the club for a while, and then drive on to Hot Springs.
The other 4 calls, at 12:17, 12:21, 1:40, and 1:59 p.m., originated from 7412 Pontiac Drive. The purpose of the calls? Finding out if Alice was home. According to Yankee, Mary Lee typically made her secretive calls to Alice from a payphone. I don't know why she called from her house that day, especially that day, Yankee said, adding it didn't make sense unless she was nervous. Yankee himself had called the McArthur house twice, at 10:39 a.m. from a phone in Park Hill, then at 11:10 a.m. from a payphone on Cantrell Road. If Alice had answered, he would have pretended to be calling for a Dr. John Allen. I kind of thought it was going to be over with for the day, Yankee said. By lunchtime, the duo had given up and McClendon had gone home.
Yes. And Larry said he was going home. If I heard anything, he'd call. And I also went home, took a shower and laid down. And about 2:30 I got up, and I was going to call Lee back. And I called the Alice McArthur residence first, and Mr. McArthur was home. Then I called Lee, and she informed me that she had already called Mr. McArthur, and she knew that she was home. And I said, yes, I know, I just called myself. And then she said, well, can we do it? And I said, well, we don't even have much time, because they were supposed to go away for the weekend. They were leaving, and I thought they were leaving around 4:30, and it was already 2:30, and of course Larry was home. I didn't think we could get it done in time, but she said that she could get it put off where they wouldn't leave till, a little bit later, because she was going to meet with Bill that afternoon anyway. That was going to be her alibi. She was going to make certain that she was at McArthur's office at the time of the murder.
The conversation with Mary Lee was around 2:30 p.m. Yankee then called McClendon to tell him the plan was back on.
When he came back, I a wire had burned two ends on his car, and we had it repaired before we could leave. In fact, it had run the battery down. And I went to a service station and borrowed some jumper cables. In fact, I had done that while Larry was repairing his wire that was burned in two. And as I pulled back up to the house, Lee was driving by the apartment. It was easy to see. In fact, she made two passes by. She came by again. I just made a circle and came back by.
Yankee assumed Mary Lee was wondering whether they'd be able to pull it off. With his hand, he indicated to her that everything was all right, and they were dealing with a small problem with the car. Mary Lee nodded and drove off.
As soon as we repaired that wire, we took right off.
Yankee left in a pickup truck he had borrowed from a friend, who happened to be a Little Rock police officer, the previous day, while McClendon drove his car, a Cadillac with a dark top and gold bottom. After driving west, it was about 3:30 p.m. when Yankee pulled off the road near the John Miller Tire Company, located at 3720 Cantrell Road, where a Good Day dispensary now sits. Yankee had remembered he'd left his apartment door open. McClendon offered to go back and lock it while Yankee continued on. According to records that Phoebe kept, Mary Lee arrived at 2020 Broadway, about 20 blocks south of Yankee's apartment at 3:30 p.m.
I became aware of the Orsini being in the office sometime prior to 4 o'clock. I came out of my office, walked over to the front reception area. There saw her sitting in Phoebe's office, at Phoebe's desk.
Anyway, after she got here, I was here about like 10 or 15 minutes before I had to leave. And I remember her, she said, I've got to call Mom and check on Tiffany. And that's when Diane said she remembered it took her about 3 times, she said, to get the right number, to call her mother. We don't know who she talked to, or if she did talk to anybody, or if in fact she did talk to her mother.
By 3:40, Phoebe had left the office, but her counterpart, Diane Dunton, later shared her own interaction with Mary Lee.
And evidently everything started going crazy. Phone started ringing. Diane had wanted to leave early, too. And Diane told me that Lee had Diane said she wanted to leave. Once you go ahead and leave, and I'll catch the phone. And Diane wouldn't go. She wouldn't leave. And also, she made the comment to Diane, standing outside talking to her, she saw Bill, that she just didn't think that Alice and Bill fit together.
In an interview with Little Rock Police, after the apparent wrong dials, Dutton recalled pressing a button on her own phone that automatically called the number belonging to Mary Lee's mother. As she left the room, Diane heard Mary Lee ask someone, "Have you picked up Tiffany?" When she returned, the call was already over. At 4 p.m., John Spurgeon, an agent for the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency, received a copy of a memo from the Little Rock Police Department's intelligence unit. The memo reported that Bob Trout had called the Arkansas State Police the day before. He'd informed them that a white male named Chuck, armed with a 9mm pistol, was in town and possibly had a contract to kill Alice McArthur. After having split from McClendon, Yankee made his way to Leroy's Flowers and Gifts, located at the intersection of Cantrell Road and Mississippi Street, in a spot where a Slim Chicken sits today. At 4:10 p.m., Yankee walked out with a plastic pot that held a dozen yellow and red flowers. With them came a printed card. It read, "Have a nice day." The arrangement cost $12.50. 5 minutes later, Yankee met McClendon on the shoulder of the road near the Interstate 430 exit. With the clipboard, sign, and flowers in hand, Yankee got in the Cadillac and they drove off. They briefly pulled into the parking lot of a Jewish temple on North Rodney Parham Road, where they took the license plate off the car and placed the delivery sign in a window. As they drove through the Pleasant Valley neighborhood where the McArthurs lived, Yankee looked out the car's dark tinted windows and noted various people outside in their yards. "We didn't know if it was a good time or not," Yankee would say. "We figured that there would always be somebody out there on a nice day." When McClendon and Yankee arrived at 24 Inverness Circle, Yankee backed the car into the north entrance of McArthur's circular driveway.
That's the side the sign was on. I wanted the sign to face the house. He was in a right rear window.
McClendon exited the car with the flowers and the .38 caliber pistol. Sitting in the car, Yankee watched his partner knock or ring the doorbell. When the door opened, Yankee could see Alice's arm in the doorway.
She was supposed to have the sign for him, and he thought that's what would get him into the house. Yeah, she didn't even offer to do it at the door. She just took the flowers and held the door open, and he went in. Very long at all. In fact, I got out of the car and just started walking slowly towards the door where I could hear better. Even before I got to the door, I heard the first shot. And then I just started getting a little closer, then I heard the other 2 shots.
Yankee also planned to help retrieve the flowers and their other props. Yankee, wearing sunglasses, went toward the door and stepped inside. He took the sunglasses off to help better see. By the time I got them off, I didn't even know which way he went, Yankee recalled. I started to go forward down some steps, and then I heard a little commotion behind me. It was McClendon running out the door. Yankee turned and started to retreat from the house.
I was only in there a few seconds, and I never was in there long enough to even get my eyes focused good. And Larry was in there just a few seconds after he fired that last shot. He was running out that door. I mean, there wasn't any time for him to do anything except get out.
Larry, what happened? Yankee called after his partner, who only responded by saying, "Let's go," multiple times. They jumped in the car and sped away. A block away from the house, Yankee began asking McClendon about what had happened. "Man, you left the flowers in there," Yankee said. Suddenly remembering them, McClendon said Alice, quote, "dropped them when we first went in the hallway," end quote, after he first fired at her and missed. He then chased Alice into a room upstairs. "We're gonna have to get them because I know my fingerprints are on them, and they could trace them back to me," said Yankee, who turned around to go back to the house.
But as I went back to the house, I could see the neighbors were getting a little suspicious. There was a woman, in fact, right across the street. It looked like she was going to the house. She was walking towards the house. Larry didn't know who was having it done, so he didn't know about Bill. But I was thinking that I can get a hold of Lee and just have him take care of the flowers, so it wasn't worth going back in for. So I just drove right on by and we left.
As the Cadillac peeled out of 24 Inverness Circle, it was roughly 4:30 p.m. The pair raced back to where they'd left Yankee's truck. McClendon ripped up the fake delivery sign and the clipboard paper, then wiped the gun for fingerprints. After they were placed in a paper sack, Yankee took them with him in case the police had a description of McClendon's car. After his meeting with Mary Lee, McArthur estimated he left his office between 4:30 and 4:45.
Now, my secretaries have told me that the ORSINI was the last one I saw, and this girl, Diane, my other secretary, the two of them left at the same time. I stayed behind, locked the doors of the office, turned out the lights, and then I left. And when I left, neither one of them were outside. They both go.
The drive from 2020 Broadway to 24 Inverness Circle in the Pleasant Valley neighborhood is about 11 miles. As McArthur drove north, Yankee drove south in his borrowed truck. He went to the Interstate 430 bridge and dropped everything in the paper sack, plus the gun, into the Arkansas River. As McArthur got on the off-ramp for his exit, the car clock, which ran a couple minutes fast, said 4:55 p.m. When he pulled into his home's circular driveway and parked behind Alice's car, McArthur guessed it was between 5:05 and 5:10.
The wooden door was open, the glass door was closed, and our dog, like silver pool, was out on the steps, above the steps of the house. That was unusual. Didn't really concern me too much because you could have gotten it for a lot of different reasons.
He picked up the poodle, named Boo, and entered the house. Around this time, Yankee was at the Coffee Shop, a bar on Main Street in North Little Rock, located between 4th and 5th Street. For about 15 minutes, he had drank beer and attempted to call Mary Lee multiple times. He finally got through between 5:05 and 5:10 p.m. Yankee told her the hit had been successful, but that McClendon had left the flowers behind. "Don't worry about the flowers. I could take care of the flowers," Mary Lee said, telling Yankee that McArthur would dispose of the flowers before he called the police. Mary Lee told him she had all of McArthur's reward money except $5,000, which she would get when the bank opened the next week. Yankee hung up to call McClendon and to tell him about the delayed payment. It was 5:15 p.m. when Phoebe Pinkston received a call from Mary Lee on the phone at her husband's pawn shop, located on, of all places, McArthur Drive in North Little Rock.
Okay, she called and was hysterical, saying that her phone had been bugged from the North Little Rock Police Department since last fall, which we all said anyway, and I couldn't understand why she was so upset. She was screaming, "My God, how many people are going to have to be killed before they find out who's doing this, without trying to make something out of, her and Bill." And a lot of it I didn't listen to because I was wanting to leave. And she was just rambling on. And that's when she was, "I used to meant there's somebody at my door." She puts the phone down. I hear nothing. And that's when she came back and said a black man came up to her door carrying a box. And we were joking around saying it's the time of year all the blacks go by yard to yard, coming up to your door wanting to mow your lawn. And she said, "Yeah, I guess my lawn's in pretty bad shape." And I think it was shortly after that I said, "Well, I've got to go. Paul's wanting to go eat, But she seemed, after she said the instant about somebody coming to her door, she seemed relatively calmed down.
When they hung up, it was between 5:35 and 5:40 p.m. After entering his home, Bill McArthur immediately noticed 4 or 5 sacks of groceries stacked next to the front door.
I could get the television on downstairs. I don't recall whether I called Alice's name or not. That, right there. It seems to me that I did, but I'm not certain. And I walked on upstairs and walked down the hall. And the first door on your left, going down the hall, is a room that we were converting into a closet. And all of my clothes were in there.
After tossing his suit jacket onto a rack in the room, he walked across the hall to his bedroom, emptied his pockets on a dresser, and returned downstairs.
And when I went downstairs, I saw Alice's shoes and her cigarettes and lighter. Well, the shoes were on the floor by the couch, and the lighter and cigarettes were on the table.
He then checked the house's game room, laundry room, and garage. No sign of Alice. McArthur then checked the front yard, both side yards, and the backyard, calling out for Alice at least once and receiving no response.
I came back in the house, and went upstairs, and headed down the hall, and I saw this damage to the wall. Now, why I didn't see it the first time, I don't know. But I didn't see it at all the first time I walked through.
The mark itself, made in the brown wallpaper outside of the master bedroom, looked like a knife had been taken to it. A small piece of wallpaper stuck straight out.
And I turned right then and ran back to the phone in the kitchen, which was the closest. When I picked up the phone, I couldn't get a dial tone.
He then ran into the den where the family's cordless phone, or as McArthur referred to it, an extendaphone, was on, making the phone line unusable. He turned it off. Later unsure of why he didn't just use that phone, McArthur returned to the kitchen phone and called the Little Rock Police Department, but he mistakenly called the agency's old number, getting a binding office instead. After getting the correct number and calling it, he told whoever answered he believed his wife had been kidnapped. It was 5:17 p.m. Then, according to a report filed by Pulaski County Sheriff's Captain Larry Dill, McArthur called him at 5:23 p.m.
Dill? Larry? Yeah, Bill McArthur. How are you, Counselor? I'm not too good. Can you get a car out to my house real quick? You betcha. I don't know what's going on here. I walked in, my house is open, my dog's outside, my wife's gone, and what looks like a bullet hole's in the wall. Be right there. All right, bye.
McArthur then placed a call to someone else in the neighborhood.
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure why I decided to call Anita Prather. I guess hoping against hope more than anything else, because I was scared shitless about this time.
Anita Prather, one of Alice's close friends, lived just around the corner at 51 Inverness Circle. At that moment, she was getting ready for a night at the nearby tennis club with her husband, Dr. Jerry Prather, who was outside mowing the lawn.
And I remember it must have been about 5:20 that I got the phone call from Bill McArthur. And he said, I was upstairs and I answered it upstairs. And he said, have you seen or talked to Alice in the last little bit? And I said, no, I thought she had gone on to the lake. And he said, no, we decided to go this afternoon. Said, and she's not here. And he said, I'm real worried. And he said, I've already called the police. And so when he said that, I knew that he really was upset. I said, well, what, is there anything else there? Do you see anything else that looks like, there's been trouble, or what's got you so upset? And he said, well, I said, there's a hole in the wall. And I said, is that significant or something? Well, it looks like it could be a bullet. I said, it could be. And he said, yeah, I think so, or something, to that effect. It was like he wasn't sure what it was. I said, but let me know as soon as you know anything. Because I didn't feel like I could just, go on off and play tennis without knowing what was going on with Alice. And I went up downstairs. My husband was in the kitchen, and I told him about the phone call. He thought the same thing I did. That I really didn't think. You worried, but I really didn't think that anything bad had happened.
Pressed for time before they were supposed to be at the tennis club, Prather left to get food for her kids at Burger King. She planned to stop by the McArthurs to make sure everything was all right. Prather estimated she arrived at 24 Inverness Circle around 5:30.
As soon as I got there to the door, Bill opened the door, and I said something about, I just had to come by or something. He said, yeah, I know what you mean, because he was upset. And we went up to the kitchen, And I said, you don't know anything yet. And he said, no. And I said, well, where's this hole in the wall that you were talking about? And he said, well, it's down here, down the hall. And he said, he walked down, and we looked at the hole in the wall, and I looked at it, and it just looked like something had hit the wall and pushed the wallpaper up.
Prather thought it could have been caused by equipment being used to renovate the house. Within 2 minutes of Prather's arrival, the first law enforcement unit appeared on the scene in the form of Little Rock patrolman Robert McNeely. McArthur repeated the state of things for McNeely and showed him the hole in the north side of the upstairs hall.
I believe I was talking to the policeman and Nita walked off. Or at least I don't really know what she did. I wasn't paying any attention to her at that point.
Now, this is where the narrative gets muddled, thanks to half-remembered memories in the midst of chaos and two conflicting reports filed by Dill and McNeely for rival agencies.
As he walked down the hall to show him this hole in the wall, well, I walked along behind him. I was just listening. And while they were standing there and they were talking about that right there, I walked past them through the bedroom door because I looked in there and I saw these clothes folded on the bed. Lots of little neat stacks of clothing, shorts and T-shirts and stuff like that. And I started thinking about, I kind of quit listening to them. I started thinking about Alice and what she'd been doing, and I could see that where she'd been getting everything ready to go, and I was just sort of lost in my own thought. And the bedroom was very dimly lit. There were no lights on, and the only light was coming through, I guess, the windows that are on the back side of the house. And then I heard the two men start back down the hall. I was kind of halfway listening to what they were saying, and I was thinking about what I was looking at, and I heard them start back down, and I heard a bunch of other men coming in the front.
It was approximately 5:35 p.m., according to Dill's report. What Prather was hearing was the arrival of a small army of Pulaski County deputies and detectives led by Dill. Dill claimed he saw McNeely near the kitchen interviewing McArthur and asked McArthur if he'd found Alice. McArthur said he didn't know where she was and pointed in the direction of the bullet hole. Dill began walking in that direction.
And I turned around to follow Bill and the other officer down the hall. And as I turned for some reason to the left instead of to my right. And the closet door was behind me, and it was partially open. And when I turned, my field of vision just went past the closet door, and something just didn't look right. And I just glanced back, and it just took me an instant to realize that I was looking at legs, at bended knees. I was instantly terrified, and I don't even remember going from there to the front door.
The next thing Prather knew, she was running into a man she didn't know for an agency she couldn't recall. "My God, please tell me that's not legs I see in the closet," she cried. Dill reported she said it to him. So did McNeely.
Somebody said, "Where?" And I remember I just went, I said, "Down in the bedroom," or something like that, or in the closet, or I can't remember, but anyway, I remember I pointed, and then everybody started running that way. And Bill started, and somebody, I don't know who it was, pushed him back and said, "You stay here." And he had hold of the railing. I remember looking at him because I was standing there by the kitchen door, and I remember looking at him, and I could remember him standing there, and he had hold of the railing just like that, and kind of behind him or to the side of him, and he just was like he was just frozen.
According to Dill's report, it was he who warned McArthur not to go in the bedroom and told him and Prather to go sit in the living room while he checked it out. Both Dill and McNeely reported they were the one who identified Alice McArthur in the closet. McNeely wrote that he found her, and while using the bedroom phone to call LRPD headquarters about the homicide, he heard Dill and the deputies arrive. Based on Dill's report, which was filed without a date on it, this is what he saw in the closet. "I went to the closet. and felt of the legs of the victim, Dill wrote. The legs were warm to the touch, so I pushed the clothing back from the victim's head to feel of her neck. There was no pulse, and blood was on the victim's face. According to Dill, Alice was in the sitting position with her back against the west wall of the closet, and her head was slumped forward. Alice had been barefoot and wore blue-green shorts and a shirt. Later, the bouquet of flowers, with the card that read, "Have a nice day," were found at her feet. Investigators would speculate Alice had run to the closet to retrieve a gun the family kept on its top shelf. Dill said he then returned to the living room. Dill's report claims that he told McNeely where he found Alice and then showed him before McNeely called LRPD headquarters.
And I was sitting there. Somebody came back out, and I can't identify that man, and he took Bill and he sat him down, and Bill said, "Is she in there?" And then the guy just looked at him and he said, "For God's sake, man, tell me if she's in there."
Dill recalled telling McArthur his wife was dead. "Oh my God," McArthur yelled before weeping. Sometime after 5:30 p.m., Tim Daly, a patrol division commander for the Little Rock Police, was busy getting out of his uniform at home when he got a call. On the other end was a lieutenant. He was calling to inform Daly of Alice's murder and that 24 Inverness Circle was, quote, swarming with county sheriff's deputies. The lieutenant had ordered the LRPD officer on the scene, another officer named Rick Edgar, to remove the deputies and secure the house. Daly immediately put his uniform back on, and after failing to call the chief of police, Walter Simpson, at his home, raced to the McArthur's house, which was just a mile and a half north of his own. At the McArthur residence, Anita had requested for law enforcement to call her husband and ask him to come to the home. When he arrived, Anita ran to the front door and told him Alice was dead.
I said, and he said, "Where?" And I said, upstairs or up in the bedroom or something. He started trying to run up the stairs, and the men at the top of the stairs stopped him.
The man who intercepted Dr. Prather was Officer Edgar, who had arrived at the McArthurs at 6 p.m. He'd noted 4 to 5 unmarked vehicles belonging to the sheriff's department and law enforcement spreading out through the neighborhood. After looking in the house's kitchen and observing the bullet hole in the upstairs hall, Edgar entered the bedroom where the murder had happened. McNeely appraised him of the situation. Moments after he confirmed Alice's death, the doctor entered the room.
Me and Officer McNeely was talking for a brief moment. A man came in a tennis shirt and tennis pants and told me he was a doctor and he didn't want a half-dead woman in the closet and he wanted to examine the body. I said, "Doctor, if you would please look at the body, but please do not disturb anything." I said, "You can look at her and feel of her leg and know that she is dead without having to move any clothes or anything." And he said, "Okay," and he indeed checked the body and didn't move anything or touch anything besides her leg, and he did say she was dead.
Dr. Prather returned to his wife.
He looked down at me, and he went over and he touched Bill on the shoulder, and then he came down the stairs, and he said, "I'll take you home." And he took me home.
Edgar told McNeely they needed to clear the house and then picked up the bedroom phone to call headquarters. Edgar informed the sergeant who answered they were having trouble securing the house.
He said, "Whose house is it?" I said, "I really don't know." And I asked Officer McNeely, I said, "Well, whose house is this?" And he said, "This is Bill McArthur's house." And I said, "This is Bill McArthur's house." He said, "Well, who shot?" I said, "A female. I don't know who it is." And he said, "Is it Alice?" And I said, "I'm not sure. I believe it is." And that time, Officer McNeely had walked out of the bedroom down the hall, and 3 deputies came in the room. One was Larry Dill, one was Bobby Woodard, and the other one I do not know his name. Was in the closet. They were hovered around the closet. I told Sergeant Holcomb I had to get off the phone. They were going in the closet. I went over to the closet and I said, "We're going to have to clear the house immediately." And I said, "What are you doing?" The response was, "We're looking for flowers." I said, "We're going to have to get out of the house immediately." Dill and this other deputy got up, turned around. Deputy Woodard was still in the closet on his fours, hands and knees. I had to grab him by the arm and pull him up and said, "We've got to get out of the house and secure the scene." He showed no resistance or anything. He did it. I just had to grab him by the arm to help him. And we all left the house.
The flowers, which Larry McClendon had told Yankee Hall had been dropped by Alice near the front door, would be part of a dispute between Little Rock Police and the Sheriff's Office. while multiple Little Rock officers testified they never saw the flowers in the closet, they would eventually be photographed laying at Alice's feet. The controversy, which was had out of public eye, was over who could have moved the flowers from the hallway to the closet. As the men exited the home, they encountered Bill McArthur sitting on the front steps.
He was very upset and crying. He couldn't light a cigarette. I had to light a cigarette for him. We had heard Dill talking on the telephone to Tommy. He said Tommy's on his way. So we both stood by the door, and we received instructions not to let anybody whatsoever enter the house except our detectives.
When Tim Daly arrived at 24 Inverness Circle, there were 4 or 5 county deputies, including Dill, standing in the street. Daly made his way into the house. While McArthur was busy giving a statement, Daly proceeded upstairs to the room where Alice had been found and confirmed her death. The thing that I recall about the body is that she was still clutching an ink pen in her hand, Daly recalled to the grand jury. Leaving the house, Daly made his way across the street to borrow a phone to again call Police Chief Simpson. He didn't want to use the McArthur's phone in an attempt to not destroy potential physical evidence. Daly noted both county deputies and city police were canvassing the neighborhood for witnesses. If you've looked at any of the news records, about 50 or 60 people, it seemed like, were everywhere, Daly said. Among them were reporters. By this time, the first news bulletin had been sent out about the suspects and the car they were in. Daly said that a, quote, big ear, or a reporter listening in as a witness was interviewed, had phoned in what some witnesses had seen. We had conflicting statements from witnesses, Daly told the grand jury, of the description going out of 2 black men instead of 1 white man and 1 black man. Men living at 25 and 19 Inverness Circle had described the driver of the Cadillac as also being black. That initial description went out over police channels. According to Dill's report, it was 6:04 p.m. when the description was sent out statewide by the county dispatcher.
What kind of description you got? An older model bronze Cadillac with a black vinyl top with a sign in the side of it, some kind of delivery service sign, 2 black males. That's going to be a cardboard sign.
Gene Lyons noted in Widow's Web that dispatch could have been picked up by civilian-owned scanners, like the one that sat next to Ron Orsini's bed the night he was murdered. Dill's report said the following call was made from 7412 Pontiac Drive to the county dispatcher at 5:58 p.m.
Yes, sir. I called a few minutes ago. I've got something, I don't know if it's an emergency or not, but it's kind of scared me. I'm Leo Orsini, and 2 black men pulled up to the front of my house a while ago. And I was on the phone and rang a doorbell. And I mean, like, we don't have any black people over in this neighborhood, and they went away, but they keep driving by around my house.
What kind of car are they in?
Oh, it's kind of an old car. I don't know much about cars.
What color is it?
Oh, beigey color.
What's your address?
I live in North Little Rock, but I don't want the North Little Rock cops out here.
You inside the city, ma'am?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I cannot send a county car inside the city, ma'am.
I don't know what to do because it's very bothersome.
Okay, ma'am, if you're inside the city of North Little Rock and have a suspicious vehicle there around your neighborhood, you need to call them.
Okay, would you do me a favor? Would you talk, if you happen to talk to Mary, Bill, or Tommy Robertson, would you tell them that I called, and that I reported this?
Okay.
Then a second call came at 6:03 p.m.
I think the case is leaving again.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I need to leave. This is Ms. Orsini. I need to leave that number in case they come back. One of my neighbors has went out trying to see if they can't chase the car down. 834
Okay.
1757.
Okay, I'll have them call you.
Thank you.
What Mary Lee said was actually true. The King family, the one across the street that included the girl who witnessed a strange car outside the Orsini house on March 11th, 1981, had been called by Mary Lee. Mary Lee told Judy King about the black man she had supposedly seen at her door. She later called back to let them know that 2 black men had driven by twice in the same vehicle described by the police, staring at her house. Judy's husband had sent their son out on his bike to try and find the car without success. The husband, with a cordless phone in hand, was outside when he called Mary Lee to let her know. However, when she answered, according to Widow's Web, Mary Lee hysterically told the husband the car was currently sitting outside her house. The husband, looking straight at 4712 Pontiac Drive, saw nothing. Back on Inverness Circle, Tim Daly finally got Chief Simpson on the phone from the house across the street from the McArthurs. After updating him on the situation, Simpson told Daly something that, quote, threw me for a loop. He mentioned that he had received some kind of information that a hitman was supposed to have been in town earlier in the day, end quote, for a contract killing on Alice McArthur. The source was Bob Trout, who had passed along that info to state police and also TJ Farley in North Little Rock. That's the first that I had heard of that information, Daly said. If I'd known that information prior to that, I would have had a unit in the area, an extra patrol unit. However, in his own grand jury testimony, Chief Simpson said that information was later clarified. Simpson said that he had been told by his assistant chief of police, Doc Hale, about his own conversation with TJ Farley. Simpson recalled that Hale had been informed by Farley that he wasn't sure how Bob Trout came away from their conversation with information about a hitman. By now, in a pre-internet and smartphone world, word of something terrible having happened at 24 Inverness Circle was spreading like wildfire, specifically among the ranks of the Pulaski County Sheriff's Office.
Sheriff's Department emergency? Rick. Yes, sir. Rick, who they get out Bill's house? I have no idea, Captain. They ain't told me. Oh, I know. I heard it it's even on television now. It is? Yeah. It said there was a homicide out of Bill McArthur's house, and they had a crew going out there. So I've been listening to scanner. Well, I pissed Amy all of them off. I tell them, they said, have you had a homicide? And I said, I have no information. And that's it. I'm pissing them all off. I pissed one lady off in North Little Rock. She wanted me to send the car out on a suspicious vehicle. I figure, that thing's going to get worse before it gets better. Miss Orsini? Yeah. She's the one raising hell because I wouldn't send the car out on a suspicious vehicle in her yard. I don't know. There's something going on. And that's connected too somehow. With the trouble. Sheriff's Department? Who am I speaking to? Deputy Weaver. Weaver, this is Brown. Hurry up, I'm bad busy. Okay, just let me ask something. Did McArthur's wife get killed? I have no idea which one it was. It was one of them. They haven't told me. It's one of his family members? I don't know. Oh, you don't know for sure then? I don't know for sure. I've just been putting information. It's hard to believe, ain't it? What happened? Are you where you can tell me that much? Well, all we know is somebody chased her down in the house and shot her in the closet. I can't believe that Alice May was in the closet. She was terrified. Because she's too much of a person. She's scrap. She'd stand flat-footed, or at least she's always given us that impression. Yeah. Hey, is there any truth to this I hear about McArthur's wife? That's right. Well, what did she die? Yeah. Damn. I just heard about it about 10 minutes ago. It's popping around here. Huh? It's busy. Damn, boy. So drive up there and shoot her or what? No, they went inside. Oh, God damn.
Eventually, Captain Dill returned to county headquarters and had the dispatcher call Mary Lee back.
Yes, sir. Okay, Captain Dale said, go ahead and come to the office as soon as you can get here. Okay, I'll be there in just a few minutes. It just bothers me, because I don't want anybody to follow me out. Okay, hold on just a minute. Okay, I'll send Lieutenant Wagner after you. You do what? Send Lieutenant Wagner. It's in Indian Hills, you say? Sir, it's on Pontiac, and it's Oak and green yellow cedar. Okay. How long would it be before he's there? Okay, he's here at the office. Get ready to come get you. Okay, thank you. All right.
Elsewhere, McArthur's law partner, Jack Lassiter, was far away from that afternoon's events. He had traveled to an island on Lake Ouachita to officiate a wedding ceremony.
I got there about 5 o'clock, and the to-be groom's already been in some kind of altercation with his soon-to-be brother-in-law. I get these people married, and then this random boat pulls up to the island. This guy starts yelling my name. And I walked in, I said, that's me. And he said, there's an emergency, and we've got to get you back to the dock. I walk in, and this guy's working late at the dock says, you got an emergency call from your secretary. And she told me what had happened. She says, just on the news, Alice has been murdered. And I said, what? And she said, Alice had been murdered. And, at this point, I'm going, what in the hell? We've had a car bombing. Now she's been killed. What in the world's going on? And so, but I will tell you that night, I think I said this to Catherine. I think I said, I don't know what happened here, but I think Orsini's involved in this. That's just my sixth sense. And again, I didn't think she was capable of doing that, but when it happened, I just, all those red flags and the murder of her husband and all that, I was Orsini's going to be involved in this.
At 6 p.m., as law enforcement units converged on the McArthur home, ATF agent John Spurgeon had been among them, having been informed of Alice's murder 30 minutes earlier. With him, he brought a mugshot of Yankee Hall and his files connected to the May 21st bombing attempt of Alice, which detailed Yankee's connections to Mary Lee. Spurgeon's conversations with his counterparts resulted in the man who had led the investigation into Ron Orsini's murder, T.J. Farley, suddenly finding his expertise wanted.
It came as such a shock. July the 2nd, I was cooking some steaks out back, and my neighbor came over, and he's very close friends with McArthur's parents, and he told me about it. And about 5 minutes later, I guess around 6:30 at night, Lonnie Vickers from the Vice Squad and Intelligence Unit called me and gave me a rundown on it, and I gave Lonnie the names. At first, when you get a major investigation going, you got all these different divisions over there. Everybody called my phone, I guess, until about 3:30 the next morning. Kept on ringing. I kept on passing this stuff on about Yankee Hall, Lee Orsini. This was directly to Little Rock PD.
A year later, a member of the grand jury looking into Alice McArthur's murder would ask Farley a very pointed question.
I'm sure that y'all had about 90% or better of what you got right now when y'all went to court.
Probably, I'd be close to that. Every bit of it was all circumstantial.
Well, then, what you're saying, man, if some people had done a little bit better work, then probably Mr. McFadin would still be alive. If I'm assuming that Lee Orsini has done all that he's supposed to.
There's a possibility of it.
Alice McArthur's body wasn't removed from her home until 8:15 p.m. that night, as Mary Lee was sequestered away in an office at county headquarters.
Hey, Bob. Yeah. This is going to be a turn up to piece shit down here, I think. Lee Orsini said she could identify the black man that come to her door. Start her through the mud books, but don't do anything else. Don't let anybody else talk to her. I've got her isolated in my office. All right, now, have somebody to run out around the neighbors. Get that file. Okay. It's in there in narcotics. Okay. Franklin Mosby, Mark, John, check all that in there so you can find the vehicle. Okay. That's you can score what you got. We'll be on back there in a little bit. Okay. Go ahead and start her on the mud book stuff, so. All right. Also, Bobby, I tell you what you do. Go up there and check. See how that goddamn call come in from that bitch. That don't make sense. Okay. I'll do it. See what I'm saying? I'll play the good what was said. I'll play the tape back statement and all that stuff. So okay. Make it sense. All right. You know? Okay. Bye.
The general public continued to learn of Alice's murder throughout the night. At the Mason Jar Bar, located at 110 Cumberland in downtown Little Rock, the club quieted down as the 10 o'clock news began on TV. We turned the music off so we could listen to the news and listen about the murder, recalled bar owner Benny Edwards to Little Rock detectives. We had a conversation about who did it, and it involving Bob Trout. The topic of targeting family members to get back at a man eventually came up. Edwards said aloud that none of the people currently in the bar were capable of doing that. The second man said he believed some were. A third man, Eugene Yankee Hall, said he wouldn't do it. The Mason Jar was one of multiple Little Rock establishments that Yankee referred to as his, quote, offices. Located just 2 blocks south of the Arkansas Democrats' office on Capitol Avenue, the Mason Jar was a place where any of Yankee's associates could leave him messages by phone. That included a woman Edwards identified as Sue, who did so frequently. Sue was the name Yankee had given in previous weeks when introducing his girlfriend to people. That evening, before he showed up, a note with a message was placed on Yankee's typical payphone. The bar owner recalled what the note said. Yankee, Sue called. Everything is okay. Phoebe Pinkston didn't learn of Alice's death until she and her husband returned home from dinner at 7 p.m. that night. The next morning, she received a call at the family's pawn shop from someone she didn't want to talk to, Mary Lee.
And she said she had to come by and see me. Well, I didn't want to see her. And I got scared. I don't know why, but I did. And I left.
Years later, Pinkston would share a little more with author Gene Lyons.
had to tell me she's coming over. It was so weird. I hung up the phone. It's going to sound crazy, but I thought she's killed Alice McArthur, and then she's coming over to kill me. That's what I told Paul. I got to leave. I mean, it was just weird. I mean, it's just like, I saw it. I knew it. I could picture us in the back of the pawn shop and her reaching to her purse, getting a gun and kill me. I mean, it was just real weird. And I don't do stuff like this. I mean, I'm not that kind of person who has visions.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't.
Yeah, right.
But as I knew it, I was like, I get out of here. She'll kill me if she comes over here.
Like Linda House and her family before them, Phoebe and her husband Paul would live in a constant state of fear in the months to come.
I mean, I just slept with a gun in my rocking chair for about 6 months.
You did?
Uh-huh.
Before and after?
It was after Alice was killed. Paul put a shotgun, a rifle, whatever it was, in a rocking chair in the bedroom. And it was there every night for about 6 months. I did not stay by myself alone for over 6 months.
As the chaos had unfolded the evening of July 2nd, news of Alice's killing reached Chris Piazza, a young deputy prosecuting attorney for Pulaski County.
Yeah, I was running a 5K 4th of July race. It was in Maumelle, as hot as it could be. And a friend of mine, who's a lawyer, came running up. He says, "You hear they found that Alice had been shot." That's how I found out.
Soon, Piazza would be tasked with untangling the web of Mary Lee Orsini. Next week on the Orsini tapes.
You just can't describe it. It's a sickening feeling. Sick. It's sick.
He basically said, "I'll deny anything if you try to quote me on that."
We ended up in the parking lot out there, and the cops had to break us up before we got into it. That's how volatile this was.
The Orsini Tapes is a production of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. The show is written and hosted by Daniel McFadin and Tony Holt, and is produced by Kyle McDaniel.
The archive audio for this podcast came from 3 sources: the North Little Rock Police Department, the Pulaski County Prosecutor's Office, and the Gene Lyons Collection at the University of Arkansas Library. A special thanks to Juliet Robinson for the hours she spent digitizing Gene Lyons tapes. We are deeply thankful.